Daniel Kokotajlo has a 6-year-old daughter. For 2 years, he worked inside OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, and his job there was to predict where artificial intelligence is going. In a new interview, his prediction sounds like this: by the time his daughter is old enough to work, there may be no work left for her to join. And strangely, that is not the warning. A future where machines do the work and people share what they make is the one he is hoping for. The warning is about what he expects instead if nothing changes: a world that slips out of human hands entirely. And he considers that outcome the more likely one. He says all of this calmly. That calm may be the strangest thing about one of the most talked about interviews of this year. This video is not about whether he is right. It is about a sentence he paid $2 million to say out loud, and about a trap that humanity has fallen into many times before and, a few times, actually escaped. So who is this man, and why does anyone listen? In 2021, Kokotajlo wrote an essay called What 2026 Looks Like, right? A year-by-year forecast of artificial intelligence, written back when chatbots were still a curiosity. Most of it came true. Chatbots everywhere, AI writing code, companies pouring billions into a race with each other. The essay earned him a job at OpenAI on the team that thinks about what could go wrong. He left in 2024, and on his way out, the company asked him to sign a promise never to criticize it. Refusing meant losing his shares, about $2 million, roughly 80% of everything his family owned. He refused. Money is nice, he said later, but it's not the only thing. Sometimes it's good to take a stand on principle. When journalists made this public, OpenAI backed down and dropped the rule. His next forecast, a scenario called AI 2027, was read by the Vice President of the United States. And this July, he sat down with interviewer Stephen Bartlett and explained step by step what he thinks is coming and why he could not stay to stop it. Here is the sentence at the center of it all. When Bartlett asked why he simply left instead of staying to change things from inside, Kokotajlo answered, "If I stop, if I quit my job or do something else, that's not going to solve the problem because the other CEOs are going to keep going." And he described how, in his view, the men leading the race, Sam Altman of OpenAI, Dario Amodei of Anthropic, and Elon Musk with his AI company xAI, think about each other. Sam's probably thinking, can't let Dario or Elon get there first. And I know Dario is thinking Sam can't get there first. In Kokotajlo's words, they all sort of reason through all of this and then convince themselves that the thing to do is for them to build it. Meanwhile, the race keeps accelerating. The largest AI model of 2020 had 175 billion internal settings. Today's largest have around 10 trillion. Kokotajlo's own estimate is that AI could surpass the best humans at nearly everything around 2029, and he says people inside the labs keep telling him it will happen even sooner than that. Before going further, it is worth being precise about what going wrong means here, because it is not the end of jobs. In Kokotajlo's forecast, paid work fades away even in the futures where everything goes right. Machines become better and cheaper at every task, and society finds new ways to share what those machines produce. He has even published a plan of his own: pay every citizen a growing dividend. The catastrophe he fears is something else. It is the question of who ends up steering. Companies racing at full speed, he argues, will build systems smarter than themselves before anyone has learned how to control such a thing. And the danger is not a movie-style robot uprising. It is quieter. Powerful systems pursuing goals that nobody quite chose. Systems woven so deeply into the world that switching them off stops being a real option. He sums it up as something like AI's taking over, his daughter never needing a job. That is the mild version of his forecast. The version he actually fears is a world that no human is steering. Now pause on how strange this is. The people building this technology largely agree that the race is dangerous. Each of them can explain why they keep going anyway. Because if they stop, the others will not. And here is the uncomfortable part. Each of them is being reasonable. Imagine you run one of these labs and you genuinely worry about where this ends. If you keep racing, you at least have a say in how the technology is built. If you stop, You lose your company, your investors, your influence. And the race continues without you, possibly led by someone who worries less. So, whatever the others do, going forward looks better than stopping. The trouble is that every lab runs this same calculation. So, everyone races toward an outcome none of them would choose. Scientists have studied this pattern since the 1950s. The most famous version is called the prisoner's dilemma, a situation where two people each betray the other because trusting feels too risky. The writer Scott Alexander gave it an older, darker name, Moloch, after an ancient god whose worshippers sacrificed what they loved most, and every family did it for reasons that to them felt necessary. The trap is not built out of evil people. It is built out of reasonable decisions. But people have been caught in this exact trap before, and they have found ways out. In the 1950s, the United States and the Soviet Union were testing nuclear bombs in the open air, hundreds of them. Neither side felt able to stop because stopping would hand the other an advantage. If that logic sounds familiar, it should. Then, starting in 1958, scientists in St. Louis began collecting baby teeth, eventually more than 300,000 of them, and measuring strontium-90, a radioactive substance that falls out of the sky after a nuclear test and settles into growing bones and teeth. The results showed levels rising sharply in children born during the testing years. Suddenly, the risk had a shape, and it was the same shape on both sides of the Iron Curtain. It was inside children's teeth. In 1963, the two rivals signed a treaty banning tests in the atmosphere. It held for a simple reason. An atmospheric test is almost impossible to hide. Seismographs and radiation detectors meant each side could check the other. The honest footnote is that testing moved underground and continued for 3 more decades. The treaty banned what could be verified, not everything that was dangerous. The second escape was quieter. In 1974, biologists learned to cut and recombine DNA, and some of them realized their own experiments might create dangerous new organisms. So they did something almost unheard of. They paused their own research voluntarily before any government asked them to. The next year, about 140 of them met at a conference center in California called Asilomar and wrote their own safety rules, which experiments could go ahead, which needed strict containment, which should wait. It worked, and genetic engineering grew up inside those rules. But notice why it worked. The community was small, everyone knew everyone, careers depended on reputation, and pausing cost little. That recipe does not transfer easily to a race between trillion-dollar companies. AI researchers bring up this escape more often than any other, and it may be the hardest one to repeat. The third escape is the biggest. In 1985, scientists discovered a hole in the ozone layer, the shield that protects living things from the sun's ultraviolet radiation. The cause was a family of chemicals called CFCs used in refrigerators and spray cans all over the world. 2 years later, nations signed the Montreal Protocol to phase them out. It became the first treaty in history that every single country on Earth signed on to, and it is working. The ozone layer is slowly healing and is expected to recover within this century. Why did this one succeed where so many climate agreements struggle? Because replacements for CFCs already existed, the chemical companies could switch products and keep selling. And because satellites could measure both the damage and the recovery for everyone to see. Stopping was cheap, and everyone could see who was keeping the promise. With carbon emissions, stopping is expensive. And there, the same kind of treaty has been struggling for 30 years, with far less to show for it. Put the 3 escapes side by side, and a checklist appears. Every successful exit from the trap had 4 ingredients: a way to verify that the other side has really stopped, a small number of players who need to agree, a fear that is concrete and shared, not abstract, and an alternative that does not cost the quitter everything. Now score today's AI race against that list. Does the race have a small number of players? Yes, it does. A handful of companies, and behind them, 2 governments. Can the rivals verify each other? That part is genuinely hard. You cannot X-ray a company's servers to see what they are training, but the race runs on giant data centers and specialized chips, and those are countable and visible. Some researchers say they could become AI's version of the seismograph. Is there a shared concrete fear? Not yet. There is no strontium-90 in anyone's teeth. Is there a cheap way out? No. Today, stopping means losing. So the AI race meets one condition out of 4, maybe 2, and one more honest number belongs here. Kokotajlo puts the odds of catastrophe, the takeover kind, not the jobs kind, around 70%. But his number is far higher than almost anyone else's. When thousands of AI researchers were surveyed in 2023, the middle answer for the risk of human extinction was about 5%. The experts disagree enormously about the odds. What almost none of them dispute is the shape of the race itself. And that changes what is worth watching. The headlines track the leaderboard. Whose model is smartest this month? Who is ahead? Who is behind? But the leaderboard is just the trap running as designed. If the history of escapes means anything, the real signal is somewhere else. Watch whether anyone is building the seismograph, the treaties, the inspection tools, the ways rivals could ever check each other's restraint. In 1963, the superpowers did not become wiser or kinder. They built a system in which stopping could be seen, and then they stopped. Kokotajlo, for his part, says he would be incredibly happy to be proven wrong, and he spends his time publishing plans for how this could go well. In stories, it always ends well, he told Bartlett, but this is real life. The calm you heard at the start of this video does not mean he has given up. It is the voice of someone who has studied the trap and still believes in the exits.